So the next step that you have to try and achieve now is to take your script that you have written and hopefully edited and find some way to divide that up and create panels from it. So just having a beautiful script is not going to do anything. So you have to start to think about how you're going to break this up logically into panels. And so what I like to do is I like to go ahead and type up my script in Helvetica and make sure that all of it's in the exact same typeface of Helvetica. And I like to put it in a kind of a shorter column because probably and most likely within my comic strip, that's kind of how my letters are going to be kind of grouped together is more in kind of rounded segments as opposed to just one long string of sentence. So I'll shorten my column width on Microsoft Word or whatever software that I'm utilizing. These are the elements of my script for my single page that I'm working at. So now I have to figure out how I'm going to break this up into panels. And so what I like to do is I like to go through and I like to just go ahead and put lines where I might want to have some panels. So that might make sense as its own panel. And I try not to have too much text on one panel. So if I have something that's really, really heavy, I might go something light on my next one. So maybe that's its own panel. And then what I've gone ahead and done is I've gone ahead and I've separated this sentence from this paragraph. It's the same actor, if you will, the professor speaking it. But as I was writing this, and as I was thinking about this in my mind, one of the things I was thinking about was I kind of want this thought to be completely different than that thought. And so I want them to be in their own panel. So I went ahead and separated that out so that I know that that's going to be its own panel. So now I've got 4 different panels and I can then go ahead and start doing some thumbnails based upon these 4 panels. And I can start dividing up my space based upon those 4 panels. If you know where this kind of ends, you know that I eventually break this up. And these 2 sentences end up on their own panels. I end up with 1 large panel and then 3 smaller panels and a large panel and kind of bounce that out. It's kind of like a boom, 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 kind of like a rhythm that I created, a visual rhythm. But we don't know that now. That's in the future, although this has already happened. But I'm going to go ahead and do some layouts for both because that's what I ended up doing. I did end up doing layouts for both this being a single panel as well as that as being as 3 separate panels. And the reason why I came up with that kind of nice visual rhythm is, I mean, look at that. Look at the size of that, look at the size of that, and look at the size of these individual elements. So I like that nice visual rhythm. So you can get graph paper, you can just get regular paper. It doesn't really matter. You're just going to try to approximate the size of your space. And our space is going to be 7.5 by 10. And that 7.5 by 10, how are we going to break that up? So I think in terms of shape, I think in terms of direction, I think in terms of angles. I'm more of a kind of a straightforward kind of individual. I like the Mondrian layout very much. And so I mostly go up and down, left and right, but I might play around with some different angles. So let's go ahead and break this up a little bit and see what happens. What this also allows me to do is it allows me to see kind of generally how much space my different individual text bubbles might take. And so that can help me as I split up this space, kind of make sure that I still account for the space that I need. So let's just go ahead. We're just going to do just a regular diagonal on this one. We have that. That's how much space my dialogue will take compared to that illustration, because we can see that I have a lot of dialogue right here. And then what do we have? We're going to go ahead and do this as if this is 1. So then we've got another space right here. Let's go ahead and break that up about right that way. So then we've got 2 individuals talking and they take up, let's see how we're going to do this. I'm going to break my border here so that way I've had my nice diagonal direction so there's no confusion as to where the speech should be. So that will be kind of where one text bubble might be. Maybe that's where another one is. And then you've got this small text bubble over here. And then you've got a big text bubble over here. So that might be one thumbnail. I haven't even thought about where the illustrations are going to fit yet. And so this is going to end up being a back and forth. between making sure I have enough room for my text and what kind of illustration might end up being within this space. So, but this is the part that's most important, is to get that text in here. So this seems like I'm really kind of crimping down on my space for my illustration a little bit. So I might try to change this up now on this one right here. So let's try something a little bit more vertical. And maybe we go 1, 2, and then 3. Maybe we just break up the space that way. So we've got big text bubble, got 1. Let's make it more logical, 1, 2. So we have lots of space for illustration down here. A lot of space for illustration down here. We have a small text bubble right here. A lot of space for illustration down here. And then you got a text bubble right here. Maybe this is a close-up right here. So then that's its own layout. That's kind of boring. So I might play around with jazzing that up a little bit. I also want to pay attention to what's on this page, what of this speech is most important. And I really feel like this is most important, so I want to try to give that a little bit more prominence. So let's go ahead and put that right here. Just make it really nice and big. And this is Professor is making a really bold statement right here. So that's going to go right there. So these two are going to be on one panel. So you have this dialogue between these two characters right here. Speech bubble, make sure I make them even. That way I don't get confused as to who's speaking first. And then small speech bubble. And then large dialogue. And so you could just keep on playing around with that. And again, think about really unique and clever ways to break up that space. Think about diagonals. You can think about, so I'm going to go, let's see, switch this up just a little bit. Circle here, maybe a diagonal there. This is kind of interesting what we have going on here. Have speech bubble here, that gives me nice room for illustration right here. Got this nice little circular pocket right here, which can give me some good interaction happening right there. Maybe then that brings us to right here, small speech bubble to the professor. Got that professor there. And then big dialogue over here. And I don't like how that will wrap, so I'll just keep my dialogue box over here. And then whatever the action is right here. Now, one thing I see right away is you got professor. So I'd have to change up this illustration, maybe make this more of like a landscape or something like that. That way it's not a duplicate of there. And so once you've created your layout for your panels, that will also help dictate what kind of imagery that you're going to have in each one of your illustrations. And like I mentioned, I eventually went with this layout right here. So let's go ahead and pull it up. Went with that layout right here. So you can see I've got tall, 1, 2, 3 wide. And then that eventually translated to this right here. And then this ultimately will be what I will ink out. So that is a process. This is important. Do a lot of these different panels. Don't even think about the illustration at this point. Just think about dividing that page, dividing the space in really wonderful and creative ways. But you have to account for the speech. So make sure that you get enough relative space on each one of these pages for the speech. Make sure that they're in relative size to each other. So that way you can make sure that you have enough room for all of that. And then once you've kind of played around with a bunch of different layouts, if you like something that's kind of really cool and working out, maybe this one is, maybe there's something like really fantastic about what's going on right here, you might then choose that one to develop further, to work with the illustrations within that. You may do several more thumbnails on just this layout, and just playing around with the illustrations around those speech bubbles. And so that is the process. Don't feel like you have to constrain yourself. Just let loose and just have fun with those shapes in that space.